Hello, we're reading in Matthew chapter 16 today. The Pharisees and Sadducees came to Jesus and tested him by asking him to show them a sign from heaven. He replied, "When evening comes, you say, 'It will be fair weather, for the sky is red,' and in the morning, 'Today it will be stormy, for the sky is red and overcast.' You know how to interpret the appearance of the sky, but you cannot interpret the signs of the times. A wicked and adulterous generation looks for a miraculous sign, but none will be given it except the sign of Jonah." Jesus then left them and went away. First off, it's funny because the Pharisees and Sadducees didn't like each other. They are essentially the Republicans and Democrats of Jewish politics. But they came together because they hated Jesus. So I guess Jesus can bring enemies together. There was also a bit of a superstition back then that if a miracle didn't literally come from the sky, then it might be from the devil. That's kind of dumb. I mean, it lines up with the manna, I guess, but God never limited himself to throwing miracles from the sky. Then Jesus makes fun of them and says that they can predict the weather better than they can do their jobs.
Too bad the post office isn't as efficient as the weather service.
And he mentions that miracles don't convince people anyways. And we've already seen a lot of examples of that throughout the scripture. And what about today? Many people are healed of the same disease, but did their healing bring them to Christ? No, usually not. You don't have to thank God for a miracle. You can just go on with your day. And it was no different for people back then. He mentions the sign of Jonah again. I already covered that in episode 31. This, of course, alludes to when Jesus will be resurrected after 3 days. But I also feel like it references the people of Nineveh, because those people didn't need a miracle, they just repented. So he basically says some Gentiles will be more holy than the Pharisees, Sadducees, and even Herod, because they repented. And the next few verses are very much on the same subject. Let's read starting in verse 5. When they went across the lake, the disciples forgot to take bread. "Be careful," Jesus said to them. "Be on your guard against the yeast of the Pharisees and Sadducees." They discussed among themselves and said, "It is because we didn't bring any bread." I know when I'm hungry that I sometimes can't think well. They're like, "He's mad because we forgot the bread." But no, that's not what he was talking about. Aware of their discussion, Jesus asked, "You of little faith, why are you talking among yourselves about having no bread? Do you still not understand? Don't you remember the 5 loaves for the 5,000 and how many basketfuls you gathered? Or the 7 loaves for the 4,000 and how many basketfuls you gathered? How is it you don't understand that I was not talking to you about bread? But be on your guard against the yeast of the Pharisees and Sadducees." Then they understood that he was not telling them to guard against the yeast used in bread, but against the teaching of the Pharisees and Sadducees. This is a good lesson here. A pinch of yeast is all you need for the dough to expand. The Pharisees and Herod had the power to spread the wrong teachings to all Jews. That's why a lot of them agreed with the Pharisees that Jesus should be crucified. They had influence. This can be very true today. We have many leaders that can misguide us. That's why you need to believe in the words, not the person. There have been many examples of where many Christians have believed that a politician was a Christian, but they never actually did any biblical research into what they were actually saying. If they did, then they would have realized that they weren't actually very Christian at all. And yet we put them on our trucks and, trucks, those are the main culprits. Jesus isn't going to be crucified again, but if there was a prophecy in Revelation that he was, I would completely see how that's possible. Bad politicians killed Jesus before, and if it was possible, they could definitely do it again. So beware of the leaven of Herod. Thanks for listening.